of you for being entrepreneurs that maybe buck the huge, and that it's always white men, because there are a lot of people who are not, and we're thrilled that the Research Park and Enterprise Works has had a good history of trying to support female entrepreneurs as well, shown to be higher than other percentages of other incubators. And so thank you, Lori, who's done a lot of that work for us as well, as one of our entrepreneurs in residence. But today we have our speaker is Miranda Kemp, and in addition to all the startup activity that we have here in the park, we of course have wonderful large corporations that are doing work in research and technology. And Miranda has been working with the State Farm Research and Development Center since 2009, but going back a little bit further, just pulled some notes of a little bit more about Miranda. So Miranda was originally from, I think, Taylorville, or at least went to high school there in central Illinois. And then, again, unfortunately we don't have enough women that pursue computer science, but she went to Illinois State University and studied computer science there, and was also, I found out, in the marching band, as reading a little bit more about your history, so that's interesting. Then joined State Farm, and she first worked at State Farm as an intern, so pretty State Farm through and through for her whole career experience, and kind of a nice story since we have many interns here, that she ended up staying so long with the company and turning it into a great career. So her first work was in programming. I'm going to get my my notes back. And she was working on Java as a full-time analyst in the systems is the software IT area of State Farm, which is actually really huge. And I hope she tells you a little bit more of how massive that area is. It's probably appreciated of how many people work in software engineering roles at State Farm. She worked her way up in her career, and one of the things that she ended up doing was overseeing interns here at the State Farm Research and Development Center. State Farm and the Research Park has more interns than any other operation here, with up to 90 students at a time. It is massive, and they have seen probably close to emerging 1,000 students that have had internships here at the park since it opened in 2005. There are 3 major areas: actuarial science, systems, and strategic resources, all represented here in some fashion today by women that work in those fields. She then went on to work in an innovation group, and hopefully tell you a little bit more about trying to pursue innovation strategies for State Farm as they become a more technology-focused enterprise as well, and most recently working on mobile capabilities. So outside of her work life, she also has a wedding consulting business, and I don't know how you have time to do that as well. She also has 2 young children, and she enjoys running, biking, and being outside. So join me in giving a round of applause as we welcome Miranda, and she will tell you about her life story a little bit more.
All right, can you hear me? All right, good afternoon. First of all, thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. When Laura first asked me to come, I was thrilled, and I had to kind of step back and think about, what am I going to talk about? So I thought about, what have I done in my 13 years at State Farm, and Laura hit on kind of a little bit of my journey, but I want to dive deeper into my journey today, and I want to share really how my journey has changed. When I first started at State Farm, my goal, embarrassingly, was to climb the ladder as fast as I could. I wanted to go up the ladder, maybe be an AVP someday. My goal has changed significantly. And the reason is that I decided that instead of climbing the ladder, that's the wrong goal. The goal should be to find work that I really enjoy doing, and just enjoy every day that I'm going into the office and spending 8 hours at a desk on State Farm's time. Make sure that I enjoy what I'm doing. So you'll see up here, these are 9 decisions that I've made throughout my career that have helped me get where I am today. And I want to kind of walk through these decisions and what this all means. So my first decision started in college. That was trying to identify my career, or my chosen major. And when I was growing up, I wanted to be a teacher. I would set out my stuffed animals, and I would teach to them, and then I would give them sheets, and I would write in their answers, and I would go back and check it, and then I would grade it. I spent a lot of time with that stuff, so one would have thought that I would have grown up to be a teacher. And when I was considering my major, I considered that, but I honestly had no idea what I wanted to really do. This was a huge life decision. So I considered teaching, I considered speech therapy, I considered technology, I considered being a veterinarian. So I was kind of all across the board. So what I did is I stepped back, I evaluated the economy, I evaluated the market, and I graduated high school in 1998, so this was the height of IT. It was big at the time. So my decision was to choose computer information systems. I chose that major, and fortunately for me, my parents were paying for my education. Unfortunately, I didn't particularly care for my chosen path. But what I did was I didn't want to put a more financial burden on my parents and have them continue paying for education as I sit there, and changed my mind throughout college. So I stuck with it. And after 4 years, I graduated from Illinois State University, magna cum laude. During that time, I really focused on my major, and I could do it, but I was working with a lot of other people in the same major who were really focused on programming, and they would do programming for fun. And I just couldn't imagine going home and writing code outside of my typical assignments that I had to do every day. So the great thing about Illinois State University was we were provided with a lot of different internship opportunities too. So what I did was I started evaluating different internships that I could get, and I ultimately chose State Farm. And the reason I chose State Farm was because they were located in Bloomington. I was in Normal, so I was really hoping to extend my internship past the summer. And I did. I actually extended my internship from the summer of my junior year all the way until December of 2002 when I graduated. So I was actually called the permatern by my coworkers because I never left. And this permaternship proved to be an invaluable experience. As an intern, I was a COBOL developer, and as far as programming languages went, it was my favorite, so don't judge me on that. But I did enjoy programming in Java, and I enjoyed it a little bit more at State Farm because I was working on real-world assignments versus something that a professor kind of made up and we had to start from scratch. Also had great mentors. But again, I still knew that I was lacking that same passion that my coworkers had for programming. So I started pursuing other opportunities at State Farm. I joined State Farm Community Volunteers, I became a United Way ambassador, and I joined Toastmasters so that I could get involved and pursue some of my other passions and my other interests within the company. This led to another insight because State Farm is really good at telling you what other opportunities you can get under the same roof. State Farm is huge, as Laura pointed out. Our systems department is huge. I don't know the actual numbers. I think it's like 8,000 people just in our systems department. And maybe Megan, and you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I think that's close. But there are other opportunities. There is a research arm of State Farm called Strategic Resources. There's marketing, there's creative services. So I knew that if I changed my mind or decided to go a different route, that opportunity was right there available for me within the same company. So that's another reason that I knew that State Farm was my next decision in accepting a full-time offer. So this is really where my career began. When I accepted this full-time offer though, I had to retool. I was a COBOL developer, I was a procedural language individual, and I had to learn Java. Java was interesting, it was useful, I could do it, I did it well. Did I love it? No. So fortunately for me, I really brought my other skill sets to the table. That was emphasizing, organizing, and I was selected as the team lead. This is like after only 2 years of being a Java developer. Now, they selected me as the team lead, even though I was the youngest person by far on my team, but nobody else on my team wanted that role. I think they all kind of felt sorry for me, actually. But I liked it. They were all heads down developers. They had no interest in doing that role. So this new role came with new responsibilities. I really stepped up to the plate. I started leading our team, assigning work, managing risks and defects, and all of that other stuff that nobody else wanted to do. But it really prepared me for future roles that I would have. So I was in that role for about 2 years. And I started looking for something else to do because I got comfortable. I knew that I was ready to make a move, and I went to my manager and talked to her, and she went on the lookout for something that would fit with my skill sets and fit with my passions. But now I want to take a moment and step outside of the walls of State Farm. While I was still in that mode where I was a programmer and a developer, I wanted to pursue a passion outside of State Farm too. I didn't want to leave my job at State Farm, but I wanted to do something else. So I was one of those little girls who you would see at a wedding and I'd be staring and gawking at the bride thinking it was a princess. Like, I just loved weddings. And even in high school, I loved weddings. I pictured myself in high school owning my own bridal boutique. And I thought I would name it after the diamond. So I wanted to have a bridal boutique where I would sell these dresses, and I would serve champagne, and I would custom make wedding invitations, and life would be great. Well, then I got a job at State Farm, and I had job security, I had a good financial income. Like, I didn't want to give that up for a job venture that I didn't know if it was going to succeed or not. I just wasn't risky enough to go out on a limb and do that. But I also wasn't willing to give up my passion and my dream of doing something in the wedding business. So instead, I decided to open up my own wedding coordination business. And this allowed me to actually do something better than I thought, because I didn't have to have a brick and mortar building. I didn't have to leave my company at State Farm, but I could be involved in every aspect of the wedding. I could be there on the day of the event. So it really turned out for the better. And in 2005, after the diamond was born, and I've had my company now ever since, so it'll be 10 years next year that I've had the company. Now I only take up to 6 weddings a year, trying to balance everything and devote the attention to every event that it needs. But I still love it, and I still find a lot of passion in it. What starting my path as an entrepreneur and owning my own business and the passion that I had for this taught me was that I needed to find that same passion at State Farm. I wanted to have the same passion that my coworkers had, who were so excited about developing a new piece of software that they'd go home and work on it, or that they'd work on something at home that was, as they'd say, just for fun. So I wanted to find that, and my manager helped me find that. Oh, sorry, that's a picture of a wedding that I did. And that was at the Research and Development Center, as you've heard us talk about. The State Farm Research and Development is right across the street. And when my manager came to me and she told me she heard about this opportunity and she thought it'd be a good fit for me, I was thrilled, and I was nervous. I was excited because I was selected for an interview. And for some of you in here, you'll all have that interview where it'll be for a promotion or a job. You'll know that you're a shoo-in. You know you're the perfect person for the job, that you can probably outdo anybody else in this space. Well, this wasn't that interview for me. I didn't know what I was bringing to the table that another candidate wasn't. I didn't have recruiting experience. I hadn't worked with the interns. I wasn't familiar with the State Farm emerging technologies that we had been working on. But I had to go in there and I had to prove that I could do the job. And I did. Ultimately, I was selected. So later, when I found out there was a large pool of candidates for this position, I asked what made me stand out. And the one piece of feedback that's really stood out to me today was that they told me that when they gave me a tour of their research center, I was the only candidate who talked to the interns, the only one. So the lesson learned was to take time to make connections wherever you go and whenever you can. So I was at the research park for 18 months. It was actually a development opportunity to prepare you for leadership back at corporate. So I did this and I loved it. We were still kind of in our infancy. We were only 3 years old at the research park at the time. And what I did was I doubled the intern pool that we had. So we increased significantly the amount of interns that we had in the fall, and spring, and the summer. I was able to lead interns. I was able to recruit them and hire them. I got to make full-time hire recommendations. I was identifying work from corporate so that we could augment the needs that we had there. And I was also gaining so much business acumen because I was working with so many different departments. I loved it. I was thriving. And I was sad that it was an 18-month opportunity because that meant my time was nearing an end. So what am I going to do next? I have to find something else that I love just as much, and that was my goal. So when I did that, I started talking with others about, like, what do you think would be, you know me now, what do you think would be a good fit for me? Where could I go? What could I do? So I started just meeting with people and trying to understand what was out there. Well, at the time, there was a new department forming called Information Technology Research and Development. And after I learned more about that, I knew that's where I had to go. So when my tenure came to an end, I actually went over to IT&D, which is now called Innovation. And this is where I was really exposed to a new group of people at State Farm. I wasn't working with our typical heads-down developers. Instead, I was working with entrepreneurial-minded, free thinkers who were fortunate enough to be challenged to identify new sources of revenue for State Farm and to go study trends of where our customers were at and how they wanted to do business and look at emerging technology and see how that should impact our products. We also brought in an outside vendor who was an innovation expert, and they taught us all the best practices and the methodologies that we needed to do in order to help State Farm succeed and make sure that we were innovating. So State Farm's been in business for 90 years, And as you all know, Uber has almost overtaken the taxi and cab industry. It's definitely disrupted it. Pinterest has grown significantly and it keeps growing, but neither of these businesses were even heard of 15 years ago. So our competitor of tomorrow may not even exist yet, and State Farm has to be aware of that, and that's one of the reasons that I love this so much, was you constantly had to stay up with technology and be aware of what might happen next and how are we going to stay ahead of that. So I loved it. Again, during all of this was going on, I was in love with my job. I loved every day. I loved all the work that I was doing. And there was another effort going on at State Farm. It was huge. And a lot of resources from across the organization were being pulled into this. And a lot of my coworkers had been pulled over. And my boss let me know one day that I had now been pulled. And this is one of those times when you're not supposed to have a decision. You're just supposed to go, do as they say, but I didn't want to go. I had only been in innovation for about 8 months, and I decided that I was going to throw out a red flag and put a big no on that. So I asked him to do everything he could to fight to keep me in innovation and not let me go over to the new big structure that was going on. And he did. He put in an exception, and it was approved, so I got to stay in innovation. Now, who knows where I would have landed if I had gone that direction. I might have loved it too, but I'm glad I stayed in innovation, because if I hadn't, I might have not have gotten the next role that I was offered. And this next role was also an innovation, but it was a step up. They offered me a 1-year temporary management position so that I could lead in the life sciences space for the ideation team. So I was really responsible for coming up with new ideas and identifying new revenue streams for our life space or our health space, and it was tons of fun. We would go to Chicago and have ideation sessions with outsiders and bring them in. So I was loving it. But again, this was a 1-year assignment. So through this assignment, I was exposed to a lot of management stuff that I wasn't exposed to before. I was privy to conversations that went on behind closed doors that I never even knew went on. I got some insight into managing different enterprise performance reviews and having some experience doing that from a manager perspective. It was great. What I realized is that I really did like the manager role, and I thought I could do a really good job in it. So when my 1 year was coming to an end, my managers pushed me to go interview for anything in management, just to get my foot in the door into a more permanent position. But frankly, I disagreed. I liked management and I wanted to stay in management, but it wasn't my #1 priority. My #1 priority was doing something that I enjoyed. I'd enjoyed my work so much since I started at the RDC and had continued all the way. I didn't want to let that go at that point. And frankly, I don't ever want to let that go. But I did interview for some management positions. In fact, I interviewed for 4 different management positions, and I wasn't selected for any of them. So I was a little frustrated. I was frustrated that the reason I was told I wasn't selected was because there was always somebody with more management experience than me. So I didn't let myself get too down. Instead, I kept thinking that there's got to be something out there that's a good fit for me. And there was. So what I ultimately found was an analyst position on the mobile team. So why mobile? I bet if I asked each one of you in here, you probably have a mobile device on you or in your hands right now. And it's just the way the world is changing. Mobile technology keeps getting better and better. So with that, our customers are demanding more and more. Our customers are now looking at voice recognition and augmented reality and fingerprint authentication. They want these capabilities in just a little application that State Farm has called Pocket Agent. So their demands are getting more and more, but it's not just them, it's our agents too. Our agents want these capabilities. Our claim representatives, analyst role on this team. Now I've only been on the team for 3 months, but I feel like my background in innovation and emerging technology has really helped me in this space. So there you have it. That's my journey to date. Now, I made it kind of sound like it was all glossy and sugar-coated and I didn't have any challenges, but that's not true. And I also made it sound like there was never anything that I did that I didn't like, and that's not true either. For example, as a manager on innovation, I had to do budget. Ugh, I do not like budget, it's not my cup of tea. But there are going to be things in every single job that you probably don't particularly care for, but if the overall picture you like and you're really enjoying it, then go for it. So there are a couple of takeaways that I want to leave you with today before I finish up. And I learned a lot of this as I was going through and reflecting upon my journey. And as I was reflecting, I also thought about a question that I get a lot is, you're the mother of two, I have a 4-year-old and a 20-month-old, and a wife of a husband who travels almost weekly for work. So I get the question, like, how do you do it? How do you have time for everything? But I ask that same person who's asking me that question, well, how do you do what you do? Like, we're all busy. We all find time. We all have our priorities. And I think we all just naturally find our own balance. And I think finding our own balance is part of that journey. So with that, the takeaways that I want to leave you with today are to celebrate your own successes and then move the bar higher. So when you reach a goal, don't stop there or don't think you're done. Just celebrate and keep on going. That's why this is a journey, and that's why it's not a destination. Next, find a way to weave in your passions to whatever your job is. Another example is that I have been asked to come do pictures at various events for State Farm. And not because I'm a State Farm photographer, because I'm not, although that would be fun. And it's not because I have a photography business, because I don't, but it's because they know I'm passionate about photography and I like to go take pictures. So they've asked me to just come photo a couple of events. Allow your path to change and allow it to grow. Recognize every point in your career where you come to a crossroad and understand if that point's going to define you and what will that definition be. For me, one of these defining moments was after I started my business and I realized that I wanted whatever I did next at State Farm, I wanted to find that same passion in my career. Remember that no one cares more about your success than you do. Never make decisions based on titles or on money. And define your non-negotiables. So what I mean by this is my non-negotiables are work-life balance. I need to maintain that. My non-negotiables are I want to make sure that whatever work I'm doing, that I'm passionate about it. I also want to make sure that I'm not stagnant. I want to make sure I'm still learning on the job. And finally, I want to make sure that I'm helping my company move forward. Finally, do what you love. Life is short. I know this may sound silly or not very ambitious, but I truly believe that that's the opposite. I believe that doing what you love is important, and I believe it is ambitious. So thank you all for listening to my journey today, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thanks.
Sure.
So you didn't really talk much about your wedding business, but I'm curious how what you've learned in owning your own business has helped you in your career at State Farm.
Sure. Owning my own business, it's really helped me balance my time because it's made me, when I was at the RDC, I worked all the time. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And I also had my wedding business at the time, so I really had to learn to balance this. This was also prior to me having kids. But I think it helped me maintain like work-life balance after that going forward, because now I really have to focus on like, I've got to be focused at work so I can get what I need to get done while I'm here. After work, I can focus on my kids. Once they're in bed, then I usually focus on either doing the dishes or doing something with my wedding business. But I've also learned a couple of things that I've brought back, the way I organize my work. And I mean, some of the stuff is like really small, but like using Microsoft OneNote, we didn't even have it at work at the time, but I used it for my business, and it was just super helpful, and I've transpired that into, now we have OneNote at work, and I use that all the time for like collecting notes. It's also helped with managing different types of people. I run into all kinds of different types of brides and their mothers, so that's been interesting, and it's helped me realize like the different personality types that you run into. So when I see different people at State Farm, sometimes I think like, this reminds me of so-and-so's mother, and like, how did I handle that? I can handle the same here. That's kind of where it's helped me in my career a little bit. Hi.
So you've worked on several different versions of innovation roles at State Farm. What are some of the trends that you're seeing, maybe from a transportation standpoint or from the insurance sector, that you think are most exciting or will change the business most over the next 10 years?
Okay. From the transportation perspective, in terms of innovation, I do think autonomous vehicles are coming, and I argue with it with my husband all the time. He doesn't see it, he thinks that it won't happen in our lifetime, and I'm hoping that it happens by the time my kids can drive. So we'll see who's right, but they are coming, and they are going to significantly impact the insurance business. Now, that doesn't mean insurance is going away, because somebody's going to have to insure these vehicles. Somebody owns all that software, and if that software breaks and a car crashes, whose fault is it? Is it the driver's fault? Well, they weren't driving. Is it the car's fault? Well, the car belongs to the manufacturer, so is it the manufacturer's fault? There's going to have to be some sort of insurance in that realm. Now, does State Farm have space to play in there? Hopefully. And that's something that we're evaluating and we're looking at, just like all of our other competitors. Another area that's really interesting is urbanization. So you're seeing a lot of people still moving more and more to the cities. They don't even need cars anymore, so you see a lot of ride-sharing services that's impacting our business. You also see people who are moving into micro apartments, and I think that's fascinating, trying to live in like a 250 square foot space where your bed turns into a couch and turns in, like your table turns into the bed, like just all these different things. I can't imagine living life that way, but I find it fascinating, and there are a lot of people moving to these micro apartments because they don't need the space. The more things they own, the more things they have to take care of. So it's just, you're starting to see a trend that way. This is impacting State Farm too, because people aren't owning these great big massive homes as much as they were in the past, so it's impacting the home insurance side of things. But we can get in there and we can insure these micro apartments, so we're just trying to follow that trend and all of the other trends that go along with urbanization, such as bike sharing. So any big city, you said you were in Boston recently, you probably saw the mass amounts of bikes that you can just kind of plug in your card and pay for a bike to travel across the city and then drop it off at a different bike rack on the opposite side of town. So a lot of that stuff we're finding, and I just find it all very interesting.
Could we ask the same question on the health side, since you spent some time
On the health side? Sure. So on the health side, I don't know, does anybody have a Fitbit or some sort of wearable on? I have mine, and I'm actually doing competitions with my sister to see who gets the most steps every day. But you'll see a big trend with Fitbits, with Withings, with Basis watches. Now you're starting to see more smart watches. So the Basis watch is actually a health device, but all the others are, like you'll see the Moto 360 and all the iWatches that are coming out. So you're seeing a shift from these health devices to devices that can do a lot more. But it's interesting to watch that in the space and the customer expectations that are centered around it. So when we were doing it, we did a test with all these different wearables at State Farm, and what we found is I could wear 2 different devices on the same day, and one I had 10,000 steps and one I had 8,000 steps. So the accuracy still has a lot of room for improvement. But you're seeing people's lives change because of these too. So people are impacted by seeing, like, I want to make sure I reach 10,000 steps every day. And they will make sure, they will go for a walk in the blizzard to make sure that they hit their steps, especially if they're competing with somebody. So I park on the top floor of the garage at State Farm, and I park on the end that will not allow me to use the elevator because I want to get more flights than my sister so that I can beat her every day. So it's just like little things like that that are impacting people's lifestyle. What we would like to see from State Farm, is there any way that we can see that data? I know this gets into all kinds of privacy concerns, but if we can see that data and give you a better rate on your health insurance or your life insurance because you're active, because you're trying to make strides to improve your lifestyle. So that's something that we've been evaluating, but again, that's going to be really hard to do with all the data privacy concerns. But it's just an idea that was thrown in our pool out there that we've evaluated.
We do some of that work with like accelerometers or other things in cars where you're able to do some sort of measurement of your driving, whether you're actually a safe driver or not.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of products out there. So there's a product at State Farm, Drive Safe and Save. There's a couple different solutions for it. One is one that you can plug into your actual car, and I forget what the port is called in your car, but you can plug it in there and it kind of tracks it just automatically in your car. The new version that we're hoping that is adopted more is the mobile version, and it tracks like how many miles you go, your acceleration, how you're braking, how you're cornering, and we can offer discounts based on how safe of a driver you are.
So, you talk about finding the passion goes both of your jobs, I guess. Where do you think you want to go next, or what do you think you want to do next? Is there some aspect of your passion that
there is one particular area that I'm starting to look into now and starting to find some mentors in this area. So nobody at State Farm knows this except the people that I'm mentoring with, because they don't really know, but creative services is an area where they work with a lot of different visuals and try to promote different things that are going on at State Farm. We did a lot of work with them on the innovation team, and when they would come back with their like graphic designs and everything, I just thought that work looked fun. Now, I'm not a graphic designer, but the manager over there, she's not either, but she oversees the work that's going across the organization. And what I think that would do for me is expose, as if I could be a manager in that space and be privy to all of the work that's going on across the organization, because you're creating the flyers and the pamphlets and everything, the signs, the billboards, for everything. I just think it would help me really increase my business acumen and then stay engaged with work that I think is interesting and the new technology, because it's engaging with that. So that's one idea I have, but being only 3 months into my position right now, I'm only just kind of establishing a network and starting to mentor with a couple people in case that is where I want to go, so that I can determine that now. What other questions do you have? All right, well, I hope this was valuable. Thank you.